It's Friday, June 11th, and the time for your Barbados Today morning news update. Barbados's chief auditor believes firmer laws should be implemented to deal with public officials who refuse to fully cooperate with his department in its investigations into the management of taxpayers' money. Auditor General Lee Trotman said, while there is legislation requiring public officers to attend meetings with the auditors during their probes, there is none mandating them to provide requested information. More in this report from Emmanuel Joseph.
In an interview with Barbados Today on Thursday, Auditor General Trotman said he would welcome more legislative teeth, which could result in greater efficiency and accountability by public officials who manage taxpayers' dollars.
What I would like to see is that there's a more responsiveness to us when we're carrying out our investigation. Sometimes I find that I don't get the type of cooperation that I think I should get. The legislation has changed, but maybe it could be firmer. If you look into the current act, you will see, like, for instance, there's a post called Comptroller General, and if they're carrying out any reviews and you don't supply the information, then you're liable to be prosecuted. I think that would be an interesting feature for the audit office, to ensure that we get whatever information that we want. Nobody can drag us along, that kind of thing.
The Auditor General also strongly suggests that the system under which he operates needs to function, where everybody involved in the process should step up to the plate as required.
We can set up a system, and the system will say that this should happen, but it may not necessarily happen. So, like our current system, ministry or department, they carry out whatever functions they carry out. The audit comes in and we review to see if they comply with the law, if they waste resources or whatever. And then we write a report. The report goes to the head of the department or the permanent secretary, CEO or whatever. And it's up to them to say, well, look, fine. And they have a board. So if the system had to work and function, our central government, we go to the Public Accounts Committee, which acts kind of like a board. It has to function like that. Each person playing their own role. And then I think that if everybody played their own role, then we will see, well, look, do we really need to change the system? Or is it that people are not necessarily fulfilling their role or understanding their role?
In his 113-page document, Trotman expressed concern about instances involving millions of dollars in taxpayers' money wrapped up in transactions that lack full disclosure, not fully accounted for, misstated, understated, lacked supporting documentation, or could not be verified. Emmanuel Joseph for Barbados Today.
A leading world travel journalist is predicting a huge surge of cruise ship traffic from as early as next month in the midst of Barbados's tourism off-season. In an exclusive interview with Barbados Today, Emmy-winning investigative reporter Peter Greenberg said Barbados currently checks all the boxes for American tourists clamoring for cruises after a 15-month hiatus. The CBS travel editor, who was on board the first leisure cruise, which docked at the Bridgetown port this week, is however warning local authorities that strict enforcement of COVID-19 protocols is key to maintaining the country's competitive advantage.
The best thing I can say for you guys is you've already been leading by example. You just need to continue to do that, to be responsible, to be rigid, to let everybody know that you're caring about people, not just in terms of getting them there, but also getting them home. It's not what people are talking about, it's what people are thinking about. And what they're thinking about is, I really want to go to Barbados, but I don't want to get stuck there and not be able to get home. Now, they may not be telling you that, but that's what they're thinking about. So if you can get cruise passengers there safely, happily, and have a great experience, word of mouth will do the rest. The bottom line right now is, everybody's doing their homework, they're behaving, and as long as you can continue to do that, your numbers are only going to increase.
In addition to tremendous promise for the October to April high season, Greenberg revealed that market indicators are suggesting that vessels filled with tourists could come calling much sooner.
It's moving right now exponentially. Every airplane that I've been on has been full. That includes into and out of Barbados, by the way, sometimes even oversold. And the cruise lines could fill them today if they wanted to. They're making the decision intentionally not to, and to increase it slowly. But I wouldn't wait till October to see that. I'm estimating by the end of July, you're going to see full cruise ships in almost every market in the Caribbean even if it isn't high season, because you're dealing with pent-up demand over 15 months of repeat dedicated cruisers who can't wait to get back on their ships.
Two guests on board the Celebrity Millennium ship that docked at the Bridgeton port earlier this week have tested positive for COVID-19. Cruise operator Royal Caribbean made the disclosure on Thursday. It said that the guests who were sharing a room are asymptomatic and currently in isolation being monitored by the company's medical team. Royal Caribbean added that it was conducting contact tracing and expediting testing for all close contacts of the individuals. Celebrity Millennium was one of the first cruises in North America to restart sailing last week after more than a year. It set sail from Philipsburg, St. Martin on a 7-night journey with Barbados as its first port of call.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To news from our regional neighbors now, the Antigua and Barbuda government introduces another incentive to residents in a bid to achieve herd immunity against COVID-19. We get more in this ABS News report.
It is clear that the government is intensifying the efforts to encourage more people to get vaccinated. A week ago, the government announced that a lucky individual will receive a plot of land valued at over $68,000 for free. And now cash is up for grabs, as Information Minister Honorable Melford Nicholas announced on Thursday.
The government has actually sweetened the pot yesterday. It may not have been in the notes, but I would like to indicate that in addition to that, the Cabinet has agreed to 4 weekly draws of $5,000.
He clarifies this new incentive is open to everyone who has received their first and or second doses of the COVID-19 vaccine.
For all those persons who have taken the vaccines, whether it is first or second dose from since March, are eligible to participate in this weekly lottery. There will be 4 such lotteries, and this is a part of encouraging and enhancing the favorability of persons coming forward and taking the vaccines.
The minister explains how people will be eligible for these lotteries.
You would be aware that all along the Ministry of Health, with support from the Ministry of Information, would have been compiling the digitized information. And so this single database that the Ministry of Health has at its disposal will allow it to be able to ensure that everyone who has taken the vaccines are in fact covered in these lotteries going forward.
And finally, the International Monetary Fund has put forward a $50 billion proposal to end the COVID-19 pandemic in 2022. That's according to the IMF's Communications Director Jerry Rice, who specified that the vast majority of the amount should come in the form of a grant for the most vulnerable countries.
The IMF staff have put forward a very concrete proposal for a coordinated strategy to essentially end the pandemic in 2022. We put out the very specific measures that we think are required in terms of vaccination. 40% of the population in every country to be vaccinated by the end of 21, 60% of the population in every country to be vaccinated by the middle of 2022. We have put a financing number behind that, a price tag, if you like, of $50 billion. We have broken down how we think that can be provided. The bulk of that, the vast majority of that, should come in grant form. for the most vulnerable countries. We've talked about the massive potential economic return on the $50 billion, somewhere in the region of $9 trillion by 2025.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.